The skies have long been a source of fascination and mystery for humankind. From ancient civilizations gazing up at the stars, to the modern era of advanced technology and space exploration, the question of what lies beyond our planet has remained a central topic of wonder. Among the many cosmic enigmas that persist, none captures the imagination quite like the phenomenon of unidentified flying objects, UFOs. For decades, these mysterious objects have sparked intrigue, fear, and awe across the world, with sightings of strange aerial phenomena becoming a common part of the cultural fabric in the 20th century. However, it wasn't until the post-World War II era that UFOs truly entered the public consciousness, not only as strange sightings, but as a legitimate subject of government investigation. In the midst of the Cold War, when the world was teetering on the edge of nuclear conflict and ideological divides were deepening, UFO sightings became a part of the global narrative. The first major wave of UFO sightings occurred in 1947, when a pilot named Kenneth Arnold reported seeing 9 shiny, disc-shaped objects near Mount Rainier in Washington state. Arnold's description of the craft, moving at incredible speeds and changing direction abruptly, would go on to inspire the term flying saucer in the media. This sighting, along with numerous others that followed, ignited a surge of public interest in UFOs. Some dismissed the reports as nothing more than the result of misidentification or mass hysteria, but others began to see these sightings as more than just fleeting moments of curiosity. They began to question whether these objects were not of this world. The U.S. government, increasingly concerned with the idea that foreign adversaries might be conducting surveillance using advanced technology, decided to take a closer look at the growing phenomenon. It was in this context that Project Blue Book was born. Established in 1952 by the United States Air Force, Project Blue Book was an official investigation into UFO sightings, with the goal of determining whether they posed a threat to national security. The project would last until 1969, during which time it would collect thousands of UFO reports, analyze them, and attempt to offer explanations. But as we will see, despite years of investigation and declassification of reports, many of the cases remain unsolved, leaving behind more questions than answers. The inception of Project Blue Book came at a time when UFO sightings were not just a national curiosity, but an international one. The Cold War climate fueled widespread fear and suspicion, and the idea that there might be unknown aerial phenomena flying over the United States was both unsettling and intriguing. The government's involvement lent the subject an air of legitimacy, suggesting that there was more to these sightings than mere imagination or error. And yet, despite the extensive resources dedicated to Project Blue Book, the final report, released in 1969, concluded that most of the UFOs investigated were either misidentifications of natural phenomena, such as clouds or stars, or man-made objects, like aircraft or weather balloons. However, the report also noted that a small percentage of sightings could not be easily explained. These unsolved cases, some of which had multiple credible witnesses and physical evidence, would linger in the minds of researchers and enthusiasts alike for decades. In many ways, the existence of Project Blue Book is a paradox. On the one hand, it represents a scientific and methodical approach to an unexplained phenomenon, where eyewitness accounts were carefully examined and evidence was scrutinized. On the other hand, it also embodies the secrecy and intrigue that surrounds the government's handling of UFO-related material. While official reports often dismiss sightings as hoaxes or misunderstandings, there remained a consistent undercurrent of doubt. Many researchers, some of whom had first-hand experience with the sightings, continued to argue that the project was not just investigating UFOs, but attempting to manage the narrative surrounding them. These reports, particularly the unresolved cases, seem to point to something far more mysterious than conventional explanations would allow. One of the key aspects of Project Blue Book was its reliance on eyewitness testimonies. In the stories that were reported to the Air Force, ordinary people found themselves encountering extraordinary objects in the skies. Some saw craft that defied the known laws of aerodynamics. Others reported lights moving in seemingly impossible patterns. And in some instances, there were even physical effects, Radar systems would lock onto unknown objects, and strange imprints would appear on the ground where a UFO had allegedly landed. Eyewitnesses described their experiences with great detail, often showing visible signs of distress or excitement. It is through their accounts that we are able to understand just how profound and unsettling these encounters were. As the 1960s progressed, the role of the media became increasingly important in shaping public perception of UFOs. Stories about flying saucers, alien encounters, and mysterious lights in the sky began to dominate newspapers and news broadcasts. Hollywood, too, embraced the theme of extraterrestrial life, further solidifying the connection between UFOs and popular culture. Movies like The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951, and Close Encounters of a Third Kind, 1977, explored the possibilities of intelligent beings from other worlds making contact with Earth. While these films were works of fiction, they tapped into a growing cultural fascination with the unknown, and the idea that we might not be alone in the universe was becoming a part of the mainstream narrative. The tension between the mysterious nature of UFO sightings and the government's official stance on them, that they were nothing more than misidentified aircraft or weather phenomena, created a dissonance that persists even today. The public's interest in UFOs was not just rooted in the desire for extraterrestrial contact, but in a broader sense of wanting to understand the unknown. People wanted answers, and the government's refusal to provide them only fueled speculation. It was during this time that UFO researchers, journalists, and civilians began to dig deeper into the subject, uncovering evidence that seemed to contradict official reports. Documents, photos, and testimonies were leaked or released, sometimes suggesting that there was more to the story than the government was willing to admit. Despite the official closure of Project Blue Book in 1969, UFO sightings have continued, and the debate over what these objects represent has only intensified. In recent years, the U.S. government has declassified even more materials related to UFO investigations, including footage from military pilots that show unidentified objects performing maneuvers beyond the capabilities of known aircraft. These revelations have reignited public interest in the UFO phenomenon and spurred new investigations into the mysteries of the skies. For those who seek answers, the question remains, what are UFOs? Are they a product of human imagination, misidentification, and psychological phenomena? Or are they something far more extraordinary? As we journey through the next sections of this exploration, we will take a closer look at 12 specific UFO encounters that were part of Project Blue Book's investigation, cases that remain unsolved to this day. Each case offers a different perspective, but together, they paint a larger picture of a mystery that continues to elude us, beckoning us to look up and wonder what lies just beyond our reach. Through these stories, we hope to not only unravel the threads of these encounters, but to appreciate the complexity and depth of a mystery that may never truly be solved. Let the search for answers begin. The creation of Project Blue Book in 1952 was the culmination of a series of extraordinary events that unfolded in the aftermath of World War II. The post-war era, particularly in the United States, was a time of unprecedented change and uncertainty. The world was transitioning from the devastation of war into the uneasy balance of the Cold War, and the U.S. government was increasingly concerned with the security of the nation. This was a time when the possibility of Soviet aggression seemed tangible, and the threat of nuclear war loomed large. Amidst this tense atmosphere, the sky, once a symbol of exploration and wonder, became a space of anxiety, especially when strange aerial phenomena began appearing over American airspace. The first significant UFO sighting that would capture national attention occurred in 1947, just 2 years after the end of World War II. The event is often referred to as the Roswell incident, although the incident itself didn't immediately spark the kind of national interest that would follow in later years. What happened in Roswell was straightforward enough. A mysterious object crashed on a ranch near Roswell, New Mexico. The U.S. Army initially reported that a flying disc had been recovered, only to retract the statement hours later, claiming it was a weather balloon. This abrupt about-face created a storm of rumors, conspiracy theories, and intense media speculation that persists to this day. Although the U.S. government's quick dismissal of the flying disc claim could have been an effort to avoid panic, it instead sparked widespread public interest in UFOs, setting the stage for more sightings and investigations. By the early 1950s, sightings of strange objects in the sky were becoming frequent. Reports were flooding in from across the country, and a growing number of military personnel and civilians were witnessing inexplicable aerial phenomena. The nature of these sightings varied widely, from bright lights that darted across the sky, to craft described as having a disc-like shape that moved at high speeds and performed maneuvers far beyond the capabilities of any known aircraft. This heightened public curiosity, coupled with the underlying fears of foreign technological advancements, led the U.S. Air Force to launch an official investigation into these phenomena. The government had already been concerned with foreign surveillance and potential technological espionage from the Soviet Union, and now the sudden appearance of unknown aerial objects demanded attention. In response to these increasing reports, the Air Force established Project Blue Book in 1952, although it was not the first official attempt to investigate UFO sightings. Before Blue Book, two other similar projects had been initiated: Project Sign in 1941 and Project Grudge in 1949, but these were limited in scope and had less public visibility. Project Blue Book, however, would be different. It was the largest and most comprehensive government investigation into UFOs, designed to gather and analyze reports of unexplained aerial phenomena, determine whether they posed any threat to national security, and, if possible, identify their origins. From its inception, Project Blue Book operated under the leadership of the United States Air Force, specifically the Air Technical Intelligence Center, ATIC, at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. The project was initially overseen by a group of military officers and scientists, with Dr. J. Allen Hynek, a professor of astronomy at Ohio State University, being one of the key figures. Hynek was tasked with evaluating the credibility of UFO sightings and providing scientific assessments of the evidence. His involvement would later become critical to the development of UFO research, as he would eventually transition from a skeptic to a more open-minded investigator, contributing to the broader understanding of the UFO phenomenon. In the early stages, the Air Force's focus was on determining whether the sightings posed any threat to national security. This concern was driven by the belief that some UFOs might be foreign aircraft, possibly Soviet or Chinese, using advanced technology to gather intelligence. The Cold War had brought about an era of heightened vigilance, and every unknown object in the sky was seen through the lens of national security. Thus, the Air Force treated the sightings with the seriousness of a potential military threat, which meant that every report, regardless of how outlandish it seemed, had to be investigated. The initial findings of Project Blue Book were more cautious than sensational. Reports were collected from all across the country, and each case was investigated thoroughly by Air Force personnel. Many of the early sightings were eventually attributed to common, understandable causes, such as weather phenomena, man-made aircraft, or misidentifications of stars or planets. However, there were also a significant number of cases that could not be explained so easily. These unsolved cases would become the hallmark of Project Blue Book, as they raised the possibility that some UFOs were not merely earthly phenomena, but objects with behaviors and characteristics beyond known science. A particularly significant early case in Project Blue Book was the 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO incident. On two separate weekends in July, multiple UFOs were spotted by radar operators at Washington National Airport, and military jets were dispatched to intercept the objects. Pilots reported seeing strange lights, but despite the efforts to engage the objects, the UFOs seemed to evade capture effortlessly, performing maneuvers that were far beyond the capabilities of any known aircraft. The radar operators and military pilots involved in the event were left perplexed. This incident was heavily reported by the media, and it drew national attention to the government's investigation into UFOs. Project Blue Book's approach to UFO sightings was systematic and scientific. Investigators employed a variety of methods to evaluate reports, including interviews with witnesses, analysis of physical evidence, such as photographs or radar data, and attempts to correlate sightings with weather patterns or known aircraft activities. Each case was classified according to its credibility, with identified cases being those where a natural or man-made explanation was found, and unidentified cases being those that defied conventional explanation. Yet, even as Blue Book continued to investigate, skepticism about the project's true purpose began to mount. Some researchers, military personnel, and civilians began to suspect that the Air Force was not just investigating UFOs, but managing the public narrative surrounding them. The military had a vested interest in keeping certain information secret, particularly when it came to the potential for classified military technology or secret operations. This led to accusations that Project Blue Book was designed not just to investigate UFOs, but to diffuse public hysteria and prevent mass panic about the possibility of extraterrestrial contact. Despite these suspicions, Project Blue Book continued for 17 years, investigating thousands of UFO sightings. However, by 1969, the Air Force made the decision to close the program. The official reason for the closure was that the majority of the UFO sightings could be attributed to natural or man-made causes, and there was no evidence to suggest that they posed a threat to national security. This conclusion, however, did little to quell public curiosity or belief in the phenomenon. The closure of Blue Book only fueled conspiracy theories and speculation about the government's true motives. The impact of Project Blue Book was far-reaching, not just in terms of its direct investigation into UFOs, but in how it shaped public perception of the phenomenon. The program helped to institutionalize UFO research, laying the foundation for future investigations and creating a framework for understanding the mysteries of the sky. Although it was officially concluded in 1969, the cases investigated by Blue Book continue to captivate UFO researchers and enthusiasts to this day, providing a rich archive of material that suggests that there are still questions to be answered. Looking back on the birth of Project Blue Book, it is clear that it was both a scientific endeavor and a response to the societal pressures of the time. The Cold War, the technological race between superpowers, and the public's growing fascination with the unknown all contributed to the creation of the project. It was an attempt to understand and explain a phenomenon that defied conventional understanding, but it was also an effort to manage the narrative and control what the public knew about UFOs. As we explore the specific encounters that Project Blue Book investigated, we will see that the legacy of this project lives on, with many of its most puzzling cases remaining unresolved, still challenging our understanding of the skies above. The years immediately following World War II marked a pivotal moment in the history of UFO sightings and investigations. The war had introduced new technologies to the world, such as advanced aircraft radar systems and the atomic bomb, while also fostering an environment of uncertainty and fear. The Cold War tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union further heightened this sense of paranoia, as the specter of espionage and the potential for secret technological advancements loomed large. In the midst of this climate of fear and technological progress, the skies above became an unlikely but ever-present source of intrigue. It was in these early post-war years that UFOs, as we understand them today, began to emerge as a consistent and mysterious phenomenon, one that would capture the attention of both the public and the government. One of the earliest and most significant UFO sightings that would contribute to the shaping of public interest in UFOs occurred in 1947. The event involved a civilian pilot named Kenneth Arnold, who was flying his small plane near Mount Rainier in Washington state. Arnold's account would become one of the first widely publicized UFO sightings. As he flew along the mountain range, Arnold saw 9 bright, disc-shaped objects flying at high speed in a V formation. He later described the objects as moving erratically, with sharp turns and rapid acceleration. Arnold's description of the objects was so unusual that the press quickly adopted the term flying saucer to describe what he had witnessed. This event, often seen as the catalyst for the UFO craze that followed, would change the way the world thought about aerial phenomena and spark numerous subsequent sightings across the United States. Kenneth Arnold's sighting was significant not only because it was one of the first major sightings to be widely publicized, but also because it helped to establish the archetype of the UFO as a disc-shaped metallic craft. This image would become ingrained in popular culture and would shape the way future UFO sightings were interpreted. Arnold's account led to a wave of similar reports from civilians and military personnel alike, suggesting that there was something unusual happening in the skies, and that it was not just a matter of mass hysteria or misidentifications of conventional aircraft. In the wake of Arnold's sighting, UFO reports began to flood in from all over the United States. One of the most famous and puzzling cases involved a series of sightings in 1950, when multiple UFOs were seen over Washington, D.C. These sightings were notable because they were witnessed not just by civilians, but by radar operators, military personnel, and pilots. For several nights, radar systems at Washington National Airport detected unidentified objects moving at high speeds and performing maneuvers that seemed impossible for conventional aircraft. Pilots who were sent to investigate reported seeing bright lights in the sky, but the UFOs seemed to evade capture, moving in ways that defied explanation. The government's involvement in the investigation of these sightings added a layer of legitimacy to the phenomenon, but also raised more questions than answers. One of the most intriguing aspects of these early sightings was the consistency with which the objects were described. Witnesses, whether they were ordinary civilians or experienced military personnel, often reported seeing similar craft, disc-shaped or spherical objects that moved with speeds and agility far beyond the capabilities of any known aircraft. The UFOs were often described as having a metallic or reflective surface, sometimes glowing brightly, and they seemed to be able to change direction with a precision that was beyond the abilities of human-piloted aircraft. Many witnesses also reported seeing multiple objects at once, sometimes forming a pattern or formation, further suggesting that these sightings were not random occurrences. The reports from the early years were not limited to the United States. Sightings of similar phenomena were being reported worldwide. In the 1950s, as UFO sightings increased, many began to speculate about the origin of these strange objects. Some believed that they were secret military craft developed by the U.S. or foreign governments, while others proposed that they might be extraterrestrial in origin. As the number of sightings grew, so too did the theories about what these objects might be. Were they advanced aircraft from another country? Were they extraterrestrial visitors, traveling from distant planets? Or were they something else entirely? Psychological factors played a significant role in shaping public perceptions of these early UFO encounters. The atmosphere of the time, marked by fear of communism, the Cold War arms race, and a growing sense of technological wonder, created a fertile ground for the development of UFO myths and theories. People were accustomed to seeing technological marvels in the form of new military aircraft and space exploration. Yet the idea of objects performing maneuvers far beyond human capability seemed to stretch the limits of what was considered possible. The public's collective imagination was captivated by the idea that something beyond human understanding was taking place in the skies. The uncertainty of the Cold War era only added to this sense of mystery, as UFOs came to symbolize not only unknown technological advances, but also the possibility of something otherworldly. In many ways, the first wave of UFO sightings can be understood as a reflection of the anxiety and wonder of the era. The sudden appearance of these mysterious objects, often with no clear explanation, mirrored the fear and uncertainty of the times. People were looking for answers, but the answers were elusive, and the government's reluctance to offer clear explanations only fueled speculation. UFOs, it seemed, were more than just objects in the sky. They represented the unknown, the unexplainable, and the terrifying possibility that there was more to the world than we could comprehend. Government investigations into these sightings, such as Project Sign 1941 and Project Grudge 1949, were launched in an effort to make sense of the growing phenomenon. However, the government's official stance that most sightings could be attributed to misidentifications of natural phenomena or human-made objects did little to quell public curiosity. Official reports were often seen as dismissive, and many UFO researchers began to argue that the government was actively concealing information rather than attempting to understand the phenomena. The skepticism surrounding government reports only served to deepen the mystery, creating a divide between official explanations and the stories of witnesses who continued to report strange and unexplainable events. It was during this period of increasing sightings and growing public fascination that Project Blue Book was created in 1952. The project was meant to bring order to the increasingly chaotic world of UFO reports and provide a more scientific approach to investigating the phenomenon. Blue Book would go on to examine thousands of UFO sightings, some of which were linked to the early wave of mysterious encounters. But as we will later explore, the project's findings often conflicted with the testimonies of those who had experienced these encounters firsthand. Many witnesses continued to describe strange aerial phenomena that defied conventional explanation, and the government's inability to offer concrete answers left a sense of unresolved mystery hanging in the air. As we look back on the early UFO encounters that set the stage for Project Blue Book, it becomes clear that these first waves of sightings were not just isolated incidents, but part of a larger, ongoing phenomenon that continues to challenge our understanding of the world around us. Whether these sightings were the result of misidentifications, psychological factors, or something more extraordinary, they remain an essential part of the story of UFOs and the mystery that continues to captivate the imagination of people around the world. The early encounters not only shaped the course of UFO research, but also set the tone for the ongoing debate about the nature of the phenomenon. Were we witnessing a technological breakthrough, or were we encountering something far more elusive, something that would remain a mystery for years to come? As we delve deeper into the cases investigated by Project Blue Book, we will see that the answers remain as elusive as ever. The investigation of UFO phenomena reached its peak under the auspices of Project Blue Book, a U.S. Air Force initiative that ran from 1952 to 1969. During this period, thousands of UFO reports were filed by military personnel, civilians, and even government officials, creating a complex archive of mysterious and unexplained aerial events. Although the Air Force sought to provide rational explanations for many of these encounters, there remained a significant number of cases that defied conventional understanding. These cases, officially listed as unidentified, have persisted in the public consciousness as some of the most compelling UFO encounters in history. Among the thousands of reports cataloged by Project Blue Book, 12 specific cases stand out for their enduring mystery and the level of credible evidence that accompany them. These cases are notable not only for their unexplained nature, but also for the number of witnesses involved, the physical evidence recorded, and the apparent interactions between the UFOs and military or civilian personnel. Some of the most prominent incidents are tied to radar and visual confirmations, physical effects on the environment, or unusual behavior that couldn't be attributed to known aircraft or natural phenomena. One of the most famous and puzzling of these cases occurred in 1952, when multiple UFOs were sighted over Washington, D.C. The event began on July 19th, when several military radar operators at Washington National Airport detected unknown objects on their screens. These objects appeared to be moving at high speeds and performing erratic maneuvers. The military dispatched fighter jets to intercept the unknown craft, but the pilots reported seeing nothing visually despite the radar lock-ons. Later, on July 26th, the radar operators at Andrews Air Force Base detected similar unidentified objects, leading to another round of military interceptions. This time, the pilots reported seeing bright lights that danced across the sky in an unnatural pattern, evading any attempts to catch up. Despite extensive efforts by the military, the UFOs were never successfully identified, and the incident remains one of the most well-documented cases of military encounters with UFOs. Another remarkable case took place in 1964 in Socorro, New Mexico, where a local police officer named Lonnie Zamora witnessed a strange craft that landed near him while he was pursuing a speeding vehicle. Zamora, who had an impeccable reputation and had been a police officer for years, reported seeing a shiny, white, egg-shaped object with red markings. He described the object as hovering just above the ground before landing and emitting a loud noise. As he approached the craft, two humanoid figures appeared beside it. They seemed to notice him and quickly fled the scene, retreating into the craft, which then lifted off and disappeared into the sky at an incredible speed. Zamora's testimony was corroborated by other witnesses, and physical evidence was found at the site, including scorched earth and impressions on the ground that suggested something heavy had landed. Despite a thorough investigation, the military and local authorities could not identify the object or the figures. The Socorro incident remains one of the most credible and unexplained UFO sightings in history, largely due to the fact that it involved a law enforcement officer and the physical evidence at the scene. One of the most mysterious cases investigated by Project Blue Book occurred in 1967 near the city of Shreveport, Louisiana, where a family reported seeing a large, bright, circular object hovering near their home. The family members, along with several neighbors, described the object as having a glowing light that pulsated in the night sky. The object was seen to move erratically, changing colors, and emitting a strange humming sound. The family's home and the surrounding area were investigated by local authorities, who reported finding strange radiation readings and unusual electromagnetic interference around the location. Despite extensive investigations by both the military and local authorities, the object was never identified, and the strange radiation readings remained unexplained. This case became one of the most perplexing examples of a UFO sighting with potential physical evidence, leading many researchers to speculate that it might have been a type of extraterrestrial craft or experimental technology. In 1965, another puzzling encounter took place in Exeter, New Hampshire. A young couple, as well as several other witnesses, reported seeing a strange, bright light hovering in the sky late at night. The witnesses described the object as being bright red and pulsating, and it moved in a manner that defied conventional aircraft maneuvers. The couple, who were familiar with the area and its air traffic, claimed that the object was not a conventional aircraft or satellite. The local police officer who investigated the sighting confirmed the presence of the mysterious light and noted that it seemed to move erratically and at a high speed. The sighting was recorded by multiple individuals, and the object was tracked by radar, further confirming the strange nature of the encounter. Despite the overwhelming number of eyewitnesses and radar data, the case remained unsolved, and the Exeter UFO encounter remains one of the most intriguing and well-documented cases in UFO history. Another significant case involved the 1966 encounter in Westall, Australia, where over 200 students and teachers at a local school witnessed a large, disc-shaped object flying overhead. The object was described as having a metallic surface, and it appeared to hover for a period before speeding off at an incredible rate of speed. Witnesses reported the object's flight path as erratic, as it appeared to make sharp turns and changes in direction that were not consistent with known aircraft capabilities. In addition to the many eyewitness testimonies, the sighting was corroborated by radar data, and several physical traces were found at the location, including scorched grass and unusual electromagnetic disturbances. Despite multiple investigations, the Australian authorities were unable to offer any satisfactory explanation for the sighting. The Westall case remains one of the most compelling mass UFO encounters, with a large number of witnesses providing consistent accounts of the event. Throughout these 12 unsolved cases, one common theme persists: the level of credible witnesses involved and the physical evidence gathered suggests that these were not merely hoaxes or misidentifications. Many of the encounters involved trained military personnel, police officers, and civilians who had no reason to fabricate their stories. The physical evidence in many cases, including radar data, photographs, and soil samples, further substantiated the claims made by eyewitnesses. And yet, despite the overwhelming evidence and the thorough investigations conducted by the Air Force, none of these cases were conclusively solved. The objects remained unidentified, and the questions they raised about the nature of UFOs and their origins remained unanswered. The enduring mystery of these 12 encounters has sparked countless theories and debates over the years. Some researchers have posited that the objects may be advanced military technology, possibly experimental aircraft developed by the U.S. government or foreign powers. Others have suggested that the objects could be extraterrestrial in origin sent by intelligent beings from distant planets or even other dimensions. Still, others have pointed to the possibility of psychological or perceptual factors influencing the witnesses, suggesting that these encounters may have been the result of mass hysteria or mistaken observations. However, no theory has been able to fully explain the range of anomalies observed in these cases, leaving them as some of the most enduring and perplexing mysteries in UFO research. As we examine these 12 unsolved UFO encounters, it becomes clear that the phenomenon is not simply the result of isolated incidents or the product of overactive imaginations. These cases, with their widespread and consistent reports of strange objects performing impossible maneuvers, suggest that something far more extraordinary is at play. The fact that these cases remain unsolved even decades after they were investigated by both military and civilian authorities serves as a testament to the complexity of the UFO phenomenon. Whether these objects are the result of advanced human technology, extraterrestrial visitation, or something else entirely, the mystery continues to captivate the public's imagination and fuel the search for answers. Despite the passage of time and the official closure of Project Blue Book, the mystery of these 12 unsolved encounters endures. They serve as a reminder that in the vast expanse of the universe, there are still things beyond our understanding, phenomena that challenge our perceptions of reality and our place in the cosmos. As we continue to look to the skies, the question remains, what are these mysterious objects, and why do they continue to defy explanation? Eyewitness accounts have always been at the heart of UFO investigations, providing the raw, first-hand testimony that drives the search for understanding. The phenomenon of UFOs, no matter how well documented by military personnel or scientific methods, is ultimately understood through the eyes of those who witness it. These personal accounts, sometimes full of awe and sometimes marked by fear, provide a fascinating insight into how humans experience the inexplicable. What sets UFO sightings apart from other kinds of unexplained phenomena is that they often occur in public, witnessed by multiple individuals, from civilians to experienced military personnel. Their detailed emotional recollections add layers of complexity to the mystery, offering us an intimate view into how ordinary people, and sometimes even experts, react to events that defy logic and explanation. Perhaps one of the most powerful aspects of eyewitness UFO encounters is their consistency. Across different locations, time periods, and circumstances, witnesses describe eerily similar objects, behaviors, and sensations. The shape of the craft is often reported as disc-like or spherical, glowing with an unnatural light or shimmering with metallic surfaces. The maneuvers are almost always described as defying conventional physics, with objects performing high-speed turns, sudden accelerations, or hovering in ways that suggest capabilities beyond current aviation technology. In some instances, witnesses report hearing strange sounds or experiencing sensations like electromagnetic interference or a sense of paralysis or dread. The human element in these accounts is crucial because it connects the phenomenon to the tangible world of human perception. As much as UFO researchers and skeptics have focused on radar data, photographs, and physical evidence, it is the eyewitness testimony that continues to drive the intrigue and debate. The sincerity and credibility of the individuals who report these encounters, whether they are ordinary citizens, military pilots, or law enforcement officers, adds a layer of weight to the mystery. Even if we cannot physically measure or capture the UFOs themselves, we can at least attempt to understand how humans interpret these experiences and what those interpretations say about our place in the universe. A classic example of the emotional and psychological impact of a UFO encounter can be found in the 1961 case of Betty and Barney Hill. The Hills, a married couple from New Hampshire, claimed to have been abducted by extraterrestrial beings while driving home one evening. Their account, which was later subjected to hypnosis sessions to recover lost memories, detailed how they were taken aboard a spacecraft, examined by beings with large eyes, and subjected to medical procedures. The Hill story is remarkable not just for its content, but for the intense psychological toll it had on them. They reported experiencing nightmares, anxiety, and a sense of isolation after their encounter. This case would go on to become one of the most famous UFO abduction stories in history, but it also highlights the profound impact that these experiences can have on those who witness them. The trauma and confusion reported by the Hills were not unique to them, but mirrored the psychological responses seen in many other UFO witnesses, suggesting that the phenomenon often goes beyond simple visual sightings to affect the mental and emotional well-being of those involved. Similarly, police officers, such as Lonnie Zamora in 1964, who witnessed a UFO in Socorro, New Mexico, often described their experiences with a mixture of fascination and fear. Zamora, a respected law enforcement officer, saw a strange, egg-shaped craft land near him while he was on patrol. The object was accompanied by two humanoid figures, who quickly disappeared into the craft before it took off with incredible speed. Zamora's experience is compelling because of his background. As a law enforcement officer, he was trained to observe and report events with a critical eye, and his account was taken seriously. He was not a civilian with a vivid imagination, but a professional accustomed to dealing with everyday events and emergencies. His testimony became one of the most respected and well-documented UFO encounters of its time. Witnesses like Zamora, whose credibility is grounded in their professional lives, lend an air of authenticity to the phenomenon and compel us to consider the possibility that UFOs are not merely the result of mass hysteria or faulty observation. In some cases, the psychological effects on witnesses are less dramatic, but no less significant. Many UFO witnesses described feelings of awe, confusion, and wonder, with some reporting a sense of being chosen or connected to something greater than themselves. These reports often take on a spiritual dimension, where witnesses believe they have encountered a presence beyond this world, whether extraterrestrial or otherwise. These feelings are especially common in cases of close encounters, where individuals report seeing a craft up close or experiencing direct contact with the beings aboard. For some, the experience changes their worldview, leading them to question the nature of reality, the existence of extraterrestrial life, or even their own place in the cosmos. These emotional and psychological responses also raise important questions about perception and memory. How much of what witnesses report is shaped by their own expectations, cultural influences, or even the state of mind in which they find themselves? The 1950s and 1960s, when many of the most famous UFO sightings occurred, were times of heightened societal change. The space race, the Cold War, and the rise of science fiction in popular culture contributed to a collective imagination that was primed for the idea of alien visitors and strange crafts in the sky. Did these cultural and psychological factors influence what witnesses saw, or were these people truly experiencing something extraordinary? The line between psychological influence and physical reality becomes blurred in many of these cases, making the task of researchers even more complex. Eyewitness testimony, while invaluable, is inevitably subject to the limitations and biases of human perception. One important consideration is the role of group dynamics in UFO sightings. Many of the most famous encounters were not isolated events, but involved multiple witnesses. When a group of people, from families to large crowds, observes the same or similar objects, the collective nature of the experience can reinforce the sense that something extraordinary is taking place. In some cases, these shared experiences become a form of social validation, where individuals who might otherwise dismiss their own perceptions find comfort in the accounts of others. These group sightings often bring together diverse individuals, each with their own perspective and background, but all coming away from the experience with similar descriptions of what they saw. The phenomenon of mass sightings has been a key feature of many UFO incidents, and it adds an additional layer of credibility to the reports. A well-known example of a mass UFO sighting occurred in 1966 in Westall, Australia. Over 200 students and teachers at Grangehorse Primary School watched a large, disc-shaped object hovering in the sky for several minutes. The object appeared to move erratically, flying over the school grounds before disappearing over a distant hill. Many of the students and faculty members were interviewed, and their accounts were remarkably consistent. In addition to the eyewitness testimony, there were photographs taken by students, as well as physical traces found at the site, including scorched earth and unusual electromagnetic activity. Despite the number of credible witnesses and the physical evidence, the Australian authorities were unable to explain the sighting. This case, along with many others, highlights the challenges of investigating UFOs. When so many people witness the same event, it becomes harder to dismiss the phenomenon as mere misperception or psychological error. The question of whether these sightings are the result of genuine physical phenomena or whether they are psychologically or culturally influenced remains at the heart of UFO research. Skeptics argue that UFO sightings can be explained by a combination of misidentification, hoaxes, and the power of suggestion. Yet, as many UFO investigators point out, the sheer consistency of eyewitness testimony, along with physical evidence in some cases, demands that we consider alternative explanations. While human psychology is undeniably a factor, the weight of credible witnesses and the enduring mystery of the phenomenon suggests that UFOs are something more than just a product of collective imagination. Eyewitness accounts continue to shape the discourse around UFOs, providing both the foundation and the mystery that drives the search for answers. Whether we view these experiences through the lens of science, psychology, or personal belief, they remain one of the most compelling aspects of the UFO phenomenon. These accounts offer us not just a glimpse into unexplained events, but also a window into the human experience with the unknown, a reminder that no matter how much we seek answers, the mystery of UFOs continues to elude us. The relationship between UFO phenomena, government investigations, and media coverage has been a defining aspect of how the public perceives and processes these mysterious events. From the early days of UFO sightings to the rise of Project Blue Book and beyond, the role of government agencies in managing and sometimes suppressing information about UFOs has remained a central element in the ongoing UFO narrative. In parallel, the media's handling of these encounters has shaped public perception, often amplifying the intrigue, but also spreading skepticism, confusion, and in some cases, ridicule. The interplay between government secrecy, media sensationalism, and the public's desire for answers creates a complex web of influence that continues to shape the UFO phenomenon today. In the post-World War II era, the United States government faced a complex and somewhat paradoxical situation regarding UFOs. On one hand, it was tasked with ensuring national security in the wake of the Cold War, dealing with potential threats from the Soviet Union and other foreign powers. On the other hand, it found itself confronted by an increasing number of reports from civilians, military personnel, and even high-ranking government officials who claimed to have witnessed unidentified flying objects. The U.S. military, already on high alert for possible espionage or technological threats, had to contend with the possibility that these objects were not just benign phenomena, but could represent advanced technology, either from foreign adversaries or, as some speculated, extraterrestrial sources. The U.S. government's response to this dilemma was the creation of official investigations such as Project Sign, Project Grudge, and most notably, Project Blue Book. These programs were tasked with collecting and analyzing UFO reports, often with the goal of determining whether these sightings posed a threat to national security. However, as we now know, the official stance of these investigations was to dismiss most sightings as misidentifications of conventional objects like weather balloons, aircraft, or natural phenomena, such as clouds and meteors. As a result, Project Blue Book, which operated from 1952 to 1969, became increasingly criticized for its dismissive attitude toward many UFO reports, particularly those that did not fit neatly into the categories of known phenomena. Despite this, Blue Book's investigation into thousands of sightings has provided a valuable archive for future UFO researchers. Yet, the government's handling of UFO sightings, especially those deemed to be unidentified, did little to quell public fascination. If anything, it had the opposite effect. While many believed that the military and government were simply being cautious and thorough in their investigations, others grew suspicious of what was being concealed. The quick dismissals by Project Blue Book and other government bodies led to the rise of conspiracy theories, with many UFO researchers and enthusiasts believing that the government was covering up the truth about extraterrestrial contact. The famous quote often attributed to former President Jimmy Carter, that the government should tell the truth about UFOs, encapsulates the prevailing sentiment that the truth was being withheld from the public. One of the most significant events in the intersection of government, media, and UFOs occurred in 1961 when the story of Betty and Barney Hill, the first widely publicized UFO abduction case, was picked up by the media. The Hills account, which involved an alleged abduction by extraterrestrial beings, was widely covered by the press and became a flashpoint for public debate on the issue of UFOs and extraterrestrial life. However, the media's handling of the story was not uniform. While some outlets treated the Hill case with a sense of curiosity, others ridiculed the couple, casting them as hysterical or delusional. This mixture of sensationalism and skepticism mirrored the media's broader approach to UFOs during the 1950s and 1960s, where stories of UFO sightings were often sensationalized for their entertainment value, yet simultaneously mocked or downplayed for their perceived lack of credibility. This tension between media sensationalism and government secrecy helped to fuel the growing cultural obsession with UFOs. On the one hand, news outlets frequently reported on sightings, fueling public interest and perpetuating the idea that UFOs were a genuine mystery. On the other hand, the government's dismissive stance, coupled with its tight control over information, created an atmosphere of secrecy and suspicion. This paradoxical situation only served to deepen the public's desire for answers, leading to the proliferation of UFO conspiracy theories, many of which suggested that the government was actively hiding the truth about extraterrestrial life. The 1970s and 1980s saw a shift in the way UFOs were portrayed in the media, as public interest in the subject remained strong. Movies like Close Encounters of a Third Kind, 1977, and E.T. the Extraterrestrial, 1982, captured the public's imagination and portrayed UFOs and extraterrestrial encounters in a more positive, even benevolent light. These films helped to shape a more sympathetic and romanticized image of UFOs, transforming them from symbols of fear and government secrecy to objects of wonder and fascination. However, despite the increasing normalization of UFOs in popular culture, the government remained largely silent on the subject. This silence, combined with the continued flow of UFO sightings and the rise of investigative documentaries and books, kept the phenomenon alive in the public's imagination. The media's role in perpetuating UFO culture is not limited to mainstream news outlets. The rise of alternative media, particularly in the late 20th century, played an important role in fostering public curiosity about UFOs. Shows like Unsolved Mysteries, The X-Files, and later, Ancient Aliens, brought UFOs and related topics to a broader audience, blending fact with fiction and reinforcing the idea that something extraordinary was happening just beyond the scope of public understanding. These programs, along with documentaries and books by UFO researchers, helped to keep the mystery alive, even as official investigations by government agencies like Project Blue Book were officially closed. Perhaps one of the most notable developments in the relationship between government, media, and UFOs occurred in the 21st century, with the release of several declassified military videos showing unexplained aerial phenomena. In 2017, the New York Times published a groundbreaking article revealing that the Pentagon had been secretly investigating UFOs through a program known as the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, ATIP. The videos, which showed unidentified objects performing maneuvers that seemed to defy the laws of physics, reignited the debate about UFOs and extraterrestrial life. This marked a significant shift in how the government and the media approached the UFO topic. For the first time, the U.S. government was acknowledging that something unexplained was happening in the skies. This new era of transparency, which culminated in the U.S. government's release of its 2021 report on UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, has brought the UFO conversation into the mainstream in ways that were previously unimaginable. Yet, even in the face of this new wave of government acknowledgement, questions remain about the true nature of UFOs and the extent to which the government is willing to disclose the full extent of its knowledge. The media's coverage of these developments has ranged from cautious reporting to outright sensationalism, with some outlets focusing on the potential threat posed by UFOs, while others highlight the possibility of extraterrestrial contact. This ongoing media coverage, combined with continued government investigations, has ensured that UFOs remain a topic of fascination, speculation, and debate. The government's role in managing the UFO narrative is not just about withholding information or controlling the release of classified documents. It also involves shaping the way UFOs are perceived in the public consciousness. The consistent theme across decades of UFO investigations has been the tension between government secrecy and public curiosity. The government's reluctance to fully embrace or explain the phenomenon, whether due to national security concerns, a desire to prevent mass panic, or the need to maintain control over sensitive information, has contributed to a climate of distrust, which, in turn, fuels the allure of conspiracy theories. This dynamic continues to shape the narrative surrounding UFOs, as new revelations, media reports, and government acknowledgments spark renewed interest in the mystery of the skies. Ultimately, the relationship between government, media, and the public's understanding of UFOs reveals much about the way societies handle the unknown. It demonstrates the complex interplay between secrecy, curiosity, skepticism, and the ever-present desire to know the truth, a truth that, for now, remains elusive, suspended somewhere between classified documents and the stories of those who have witnessed the inexplicable. As UFOs have remained a mystery for decades, an array of alternative and paranormal theories has emerged to explain the phenomenon. While mainstream scientists and government agencies have often dismissed UFO sightings as misidentifications or the result of human imagination, a more speculative narrative has taken hold among those who believe that there is more to the phenomenon than meets the eye. These theories draw on a wide range of ideas, from extraterrestrial visitation and secret government experiments to multidimensional entities and time travel. What all these alternative theories share is a common belief that UFOs represent an enigma far beyond conventional explanations, and that the truth about their origins and purpose may lie in realms not yet understood by mainstream science. One of the most enduring and popular alternative theories is that UFOs are, in fact, extraterrestrial vehicles, piloted by beings from other planets or even other galaxies. This hypothesis gained significant traction in the wake of the early UFO sightings, particularly after Kenneth Arnold's 1947 encounter, and the wave of UFO sightings that followed in the years after. For many, the idea that these objects were craft from an advanced alien civilization seemed the most plausible explanation, particularly given the bizarre flight characteristics that defied the laws of physics as understood at the time. Eyewitnesses often describe UFOs as having extraordinary capabilities, such as the ability to hover motionless in the sky, make sudden right-angle turns at high speed, and accelerate to impossible velocities, all of which suggest a level of technological advancement far beyond anything humanity had achieved. This theory is bolstered by the sheer number of sightings worldwide, spanning different cultures, regions, and time periods. The consistency in the descriptions of these objects, whether they are disc-shaped, cigar-shaped, or spherical, and the reports of their incredible maneuvers have led many to speculate that these craft are not just figments of imagination, but physical objects from another world.